Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Investipal podcast. Today's guest with me, Brendan Frazier. Brendan has been a trailblazer in the financial planning space, being the founder of Wired Planning and now the Chief Behavior Officer at RFG. Your work focuses on empowering financial advisors, merging that technical expertise with insights around human behavior, psychology, communication. I find that very interesting. Additionally, the hosts, this might be like just like kind of breaking the fourth wall, but the human side of money podcasts, you drive a lot of interesting industry conversations on there. So curious to pick your brain today as it relates to that human-centered advice. Brendan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, excited to be here. Pumped to be here. Appreciate you having me.
So maybe to kick things off, curious how you got into this world. I know you started off more on like the sales side and how you were able to bridge that into what you're doing, what you're focused in on today.
Yeah, so anytime you ask somebody a question about their past and something that they're passionate about, you got to be careful because you may be sitting there for a while. So anytime I get this question, I got to think, all right, how do I channel this into the most efficient but effective way to answer it? Now, on the flip side, though, it's a good way to kick off conversations. When we talk about the human side, it's a good way to kick off conversations because it's easy to answer and it kind of gets the person going in a conversational flow. So it's good from that standpoint. But so I was in a role like a decade ago where I was consulting with financial advisors all around the country. We were talking about like retirement income. And so in that role, I got the opportunity to meet hundreds of advisors, maybe close to 1,000, but hundreds of advisors, we'll say. And after doing that for several years, you get to learn a lot of things. You learn some of the best of the best. You see some of the worst of the worst. You generally learn the things that you would never do or want to do if you were in that role. But one thing would always come up over time, naturally in these conversations. I would always hear like comments that were like, Brendan, sometimes I feel like more of a therapist than a financial advisor. Or it would be like, sometimes I think I'd be better off with a degree in psychology than I would a degree in finance or accounting or anything numbers related, right? So this just keeps cropping up over and over again. So then I started asking like, hey, how much of your job do you feel like is numbers related? How much of it do you think is people related? And the vast majority of people, it was a very small, it wasn't an official study, very small sample size, but it was basically like it amounted to like 75% was people related. So then I take it to the next natural step and started saying, okay, if that's the case, what do you do about that? Like, what are you doing to work on it, hone those skills, develop those skills, get better at it? And then the most common answer, and like the one that you get almost not every time, so there's two answers you get. Number two was, I don't really know. Just kind of do what I think feels right. The most common answer would be like, I read a book. And it's like, well, I'm not sure that's good enough. I don't know if it's that important. It's better than nothing, but like, surely we can do more. So that sort of just stuck with me, right? I was like, okay, this feels like something where there's a need out there, something where this need exists, but it's not necessarily being filled. We have trainings and courses and designations that teach us in-depth knowledge, everything we could ever want to know about the technical side, but nobody's really teaching us about how to navigate the emotional and psychological, the human side that we all acknowledge exists and is a big part of the role. So I'll skip the details on this, but I leave that job. I go start my own advisory business. And at the same time, I figured, hey, you know what? As I'm doing this, I'm fascinated by this human side. I want to get better at it. I want to learn it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive in and learn everything I can, but I want to start this podcast at the same time where worst case scenario, I'm going to learn a lot of cool things and sharpen my knowledge that I can use with my clients and my business. And then best case scenario, maybe there's other people out there that are like, hey, this is interesting and helpful. And so it was one of those, the risk in that scenario was minimal, right? It's like downside, you're better off, your client's better off. Upside is we'll see where it goes. Like maybe there's other people that are interested. And so I start down that path. I'm doing the advisor thing, but I'm also like researching and learning and listening to podcasts and started interviewing people on my podcast. And fast forward a few years later, and next thing you know, it wasn't just me that was interested in it. There's a demand out there, so that led to people be asking questions like, "Hey, how are you doing this? When they said this, what does that mean?" That led to like coaching requests and speaking opportunities, and lo and behold, I guess we shouldn't be shocked. I mean, it sounds like it makes sense now. At the time, you don't really know, but like lo and behold, I guess we're not shocked to learn that helping advisors learn how to deal with the human side of money is actually in high demand. So it sort of just kind of followed my passion a little bit as well, and that's where it led.
It's interesting. Like I studied engineering and I've always been very heavy on the numbers and got into the finance world where again it was all about numbers. And it wasn't probably until about 12 months ago where it's like, I feel like none of that really matters. Um, you brought it up, like you chatted with advisors. They said, I'd probably be better served if I got a psychology degree because that seems like that's the harder area to coach people on is, which is funny because at the end of the day, I mean, my deduction is if you get along well with someone and you have like a friendship with them, then everything else comes in quite naturally and quite easy from that on just having a human to human connection. Curious to hear your thoughts on that. Like, do the numbers really matter, or is it more on the that connection with people?
Well, it depends on what you mean. Do the numbers really matter in terms of what? I guess that's what, because go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, actually getting the business. Like you're an advisor. How do you actually get that business? Is it presenting a nice spreadsheet with the financial plan, or is it more that financial therapist sort of?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, everything matters, right? Like everything carries some weight and some significance. So, if we look at it this way, if we said you had two ways you could go about, if you're meeting with a prospect, and I have one advisor who's just like on point in terms of their emotional intelligence, their ability to build trust and connect and communicate with other human beings and meet them where they're at and understand their problems, but their technical knowledge is average at best. Maybe their process is a little bit like it's not easy to understand. The numbers are, they have that aspect, but it's not instilling confidence in someone. They don't. Maybe let's put it this way. Maybe their spreadsheet looks a little discombobulated. If I had that person, and next to them I had, or the next meeting that prospect met with somebody who had their numbers down pat. Everything was organized and clean in their office. They had this like great looking spreadsheet, this great looking PDF that shows here's the process we take people through. And they have, let's say, like D minus interpersonal skills. I'm taking the first person every single time because it all matters. But we know from research that prospects say the number one thing, the most important thing they look for is interpersonal skills. And does the person get me and understand me? And do I feel like they can help solve my problem and my outcome? Now, again, everything matters. Like the appearance of your office matters. How you show up on Zoom matters. Should it? No, probably not. But when it comes to deciding who you're going to work with, these things all matter. But the most important thing is, do I feel like they get me, understand me, and can they solve the problem that I have or deliver the outcome that I'm looking for? And the person that can connect the best and make them feel that way and communicates the best is the one that's going to be, I guess, end up getting that prospect to become a client more times than not.
Interesting. So do you think, because you mentioned, with your experience, this was something that got brought up like a decade ago. Do you think the emphasis or the attention from advisors now is it's switched where like this is at the forefront of how they're thinking about their business away from like a more traditional approach where it is like suit and tie and I am this like um, financial oracle, and it's moved more to this like coaching model?
I think it's moved. I think it's moving. I make sure to like point this out because I think it's important too. Is that I also live in a bubble where I think about and talk about and write about and put stuff out around this all the time, and so naturally you tend to just hear from and connect with or work with those people who inherently believe it as well. And then inevitably, probably once a week, I'll hear a story or be reminded of the fact that there are still lots of advisors out there who haven't bought into this or aren't even aware of it, don't even know that it's a thing. That's no fault of their own, right? Like I think you don't meet many people, many advisors who, after they're in the business for 10 years, go, no, I think it's still just all about building out the best investment portfolio that I can put together. Like it doesn't take long. Eventually you have some moment where you're like, okay, hang on, there's a little bit more to it than that. So to answer your question, I live in a bubble. I try to keep that in perspective. I do know things are moving in that direction, but I don't think that if you went and if you took a random sample of advisors, if you put let's say like 10,000 advisors in an arena, and you gave them all a number, and we randomly picked a number out of the hat, say it's number 998, and that person stands up, and it's like the odds of that person like fully embracing it and being on board this movement are probably not. They're probably less than 50%. Your odds of that person being on board are not good. I think it's still a movement that's underway that one day we're going to look back and go, can you believe that it used to be that way? I do genuinely believe that. When is that going to happen? I don't know. It's kind of like trying to predict whenever AI is going to take over our lives. I mean, nobody really knows, right? But we're maybe not take over our lives, but like nobody really knows. But this is going to happen in the future at some point.
Well, what do you think's shifting that movement? Like, is it technology? Is it a generational shift? Like, and I'll give you an anecdote. I had a guest on, very fascinating guy. I love chatting with him, Justin Castelli, who's all around brand authenticity and showing up as your authentic self. And then, I had that conversation, and you hear afterwards about how millennials are really focused in on working with authentic people, quote unquote. I'm curious, like, do you think it's a combo of that? Do you think it's like tech is forcing advisors, to your point, it's, the rise of the robo is making them force that shift? Or is it more of like a generational shift on how younger people want to interact with advisors?
I mean, I think if you're looking at the forces driving the shift, I think it's all of the above to some degree, right? They're all mattering. They're all contributing. I think there's more. I'm recording a podcast yesterday where at the end the guest said, there's the chorus of people out there, the choir of voices out there spreading this message is getting bigger and louder, is how they put it, which I thought was kind of a cool way to put it. And I think that's another factor, is there's more and more there are more voices trying to preach this message. This message meaning like the human side of money. So how to use money to live your best life, how to connect with clients and prospects, how to help them do more than just look at numbers, but figure out like what goes into their decision making, all that. In case anybody's wondering, what does this mean? I think that's another factor in this. But I think if we had to boil it down and say, what's the again, I don't know this for sure. If I had to guess and put my money on it and say, hey, what's the primary factor driving all this? My hunch is that it's got to be the advancement and proliferation of technology as we see it doing more and more and more, and commoditizing more and more of the things that we placed our value on as advisors in the past. I think it naturally forces you to go, okay, if this is coming, where is my edge in the future? What do I do next? How can I insulate my value as what I typically would consider valuable becomes more commoditized? But as it becomes done faster and cheaper and more reliably by a computer, then I can do it.
On that note, what do you think AI? I don't know how much of a technologist you may be studying this space, so we can always move on from it. But what role do you think AI will do? Do you think it'll help the advisor? Do you think it's ultimately could reach a point where it could replace that job function?
So I hesitate to say never. Right? Like I hesitate to say that there's no chance that an AI agent or whatever it looks like in the future cannot replace an advisor. I feel like it's not likely, because there's still things that a human being can provide that technology can't. And I think that will always be the case, but I mean, who knows? I can't say, I don't ever like saying that it's never a possibility. I do think that at this point, right, essentially what we're doing is, or the way forward is, you allow AI or technology to do the things that it does really, really well, and leverage that. And if you do that, then you get more time and capacity to do the things that it can't do. Right. So like more than anything, it should free up our time. It should free up our minds to be able to be more present, to be able to deliver a better client service, to a better client relationship, better client conversations, right? I think that ultimately is the future. Is by working together, we're able to actually deliver advice at a higher level, because we're not spending as much time on things that can be automated, on things that aren't client related or client centric. There's a Vanguard did a study, I guess 2 or 3 years ago. I'd have to go back, 2021. Where they went and they asked people, they were like, hey, what is it that you want from a digital advisor, a robo advisor? What is it that you want from a human advisor? What is it that you want from tech? What is it that you want from humans? And so the top 5, I mean, there were 10 things that they listed that they want from humans, but the top 5 things were, I want to feel like they know me and understand me. I want to develop a connection and relationship with my advisor. I want them to work in my best interest and take good care of me, which of course that makes sense. Makes me feel listened to and understood, and then is empathetic to my situation and needs. The next one's like, make sure they understand my plan and my goals well. And then you go and you're like, okay, well then what do they want from technology? And the top things are to simplify and organize my financial life, to diversify my investments, to prevent details from being overlooked, to account for different scenarios in the market, and to gather accurate inputs for my financial information. It's like, well, that's probably a pretty good guide, by the way, of there are things that its computer can do better than us, and those are all examples of that, right? And then there are things that we can do better than a computer and technology, like being empathetic to their situation and needs, making them feel listened to and understood. And I think that's where we're headed, is we go, how do we leverage the strengths of technology? What does it do better than us? And then what can we do better than them? You pair them together, and that's where I think that's where you'll see advice delivered at the highest level.
I have historically been in your camp, where like I always figured that there's such a strong emotional attachment with money that people will always want a human in the loop to some extent. But where I'm starting to drift away from it now is I see how some people interact with ChatGPT, and how in the span of like 2 years, it's like, that's gospel and that's the Bible. And we all know it hallucinates and puts like false data out or false responses back out to you, but you don't care. Some people I've worked with like 100% rely on the answer from that to dictate their business or to dictate the research that they're doing. And it's very interesting over such a short amount of time on how trusting we are now of technology, despite knowing its limitations.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on this. I've kind of evolved my thinking on it, and part of it happened when, like 2 weeks. Well, how many? This is like 3 or 4 weeks ago now. I was on there. I was doing something. I forget what it was. I was like, "Hey, chat, need help with this? Blah blah blah. Here's what I'm working on." And the first response back was, "Oh, hey, how was Valentine's Day with your wife and the kids' parties at school last week?" And I was like, what? That's like a really good communication tip or skill, is like, if you care about somebody, you remember what they did that was important to them and you ask them about it, right? Like that's a great way to build connection and likability with somebody. And I posted about it and made the comment that in the time between me having those parties and getting back on ChatGPT, which was like 4 days, no human being in my life asked me either one of those things, right? Like nobody said, how'd the party go? How was date night with your wife? But ChatGPT did, right? And so like naturally somebody's on there and they're like, man, you need better friends and family. And I was like, okay, well, hang on. Like that's one way to look at it. I feel pretty good about my friends and family. This isn't an indictment on them. It's just like we aren't as good at these things as we think we are. And ChatGPT, AI, it has the playbook on emotional intelligence, right? It knows how to do it well. Why I think that's interesting to me is like, what does that mean moving forward? And to your point, we tend to trust it. I think we're starting to trust it a lot more as a reliable resource. But let me give you one example that sticks out from my personal life that keeps me skeptical. So like a year and a half ago, our son was having some like I guess you call them behavioral issues, like things that we couldn't figure out that we were a little bit concerned about. It was wearing on us. We were worried about it. We thought maybe something was wrong. We didn't know for sure. And so we, as most people would, just endlessly researched the topic, right? Like basically went down this rabbit hole, every possible source we could find on, hey, here are the presenting issues. Here's what we're seeing. What could it be? What else could it be? What else could it be? And what do we do about it? Blah, 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 blah. So we probably spent, I don't know, 10 to 15 hours just looking at all this. We kind of feel like we know. We're kind of like, we think everything's okay, but like we don't know. We're not positive. So one of the foremost experts on raising boys in the country lives here in Nashville. We schedule an appointment with him. We go in, let him evaluate the situation. And about an hour later, he's like, you know what? I get what you're saying. And I understand why you came in, but you've got nothing to worry about. He's right on track. And in that moment, I should have probably been thinking about my son. But what I thought was like, whoa, I don't think the reassurance, that I just got from that other human being in that moment was orders of magnitude higher than any level of reassurance I got from looking up information on my own on the internet. And that's one thing that I keep coming back to is like, I'm not sure when technology is going to be able to do that. Like there's another person that fully understood my situation and gave me the reassurance that everything's going to be okay. And maybe that'll happen, but that feels like that's a ways off. Like I can't see it happening anytime soon.
That's true. Like, I mean, I haven't gone through that, but I have noticed if you go to any of the LLM models, it always has the baked in assumption that you are right and it's there to help you. It never like pushes back on you, like how this doctor pushed back that everything's okay.
So I just saw this earlier today. I forget where was it, and it was like one of the problems is it'll still sort of like affirm you. And so when somebody gone on there and was like, "Hey, chat, give me all the reasons why adding porcelain to my baby's milk is a good idea," and it was like, "Great idea. Here are all the benefits that will provide your child." And it was kind of like, wait a minute. That's not a good idea. But it's not going to be like that forever, right? Like, I think that's an important thing to remember is that's where we're at now. And this is going to continue to change and evolve. So anyway.
So with that, do you have any advice for advisors who haven't yet moved to this model on how they can future-proof their business and establish better relationships with their clients?
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of thoughts. But lots of thoughts that probably involve or they go further than or lengthier than one podcast conversation. But I'd say the best way to look at it is to go, okay, at this point, what are the things that I can do? What is the advantage that I can do as a human being that's the furthest removed from technology at this point? And what is that? And on that list, what's the thing that would make the biggest impact in my business and on my clients' lives? And you go through that exercise, and almost every single time you're going to come right back to developing elite communication skills to build trust and connection with somebody. Because at this point, like, yes, computers can do it, but we're not that comfortable opening up and connecting and sharing personal, intimate details, like, and feeling good about it with the computer, right? And so that's almost always the ground, like the foundation of it, anyways. But I think that's the one thing that the technology is going to have the hardest time catching up with and replacing or competing on is just truly emotionally intelligent skills to connect and build trust with a human being.
To your point, I don't want ChatGPT training itself on me personally and it being able to ask me that question like, how was my Valentine's Day with my family?
Yeah, right. Like, okay, you know what? That's a really good. Okay, this is a great example. It's like it did that, and it was kind of like, wow, that's a really cool question. It's cool that it remembered that. But like, I would, without question, it's like, oh, that's interesting. But like, if a human being asked me that, I would choose that 100% of the time. Like, without question, you'd rather answer that question with another person. right? Like you're not sitting there going, "Oh man, I'm glad ChatGPT asked me. I want to talk about this with a computer." It's like I appreciate the question, but I want to talk about it with another human being. Like at the end of the day, we're still social, relational creatures. Like that's wired into us as human beings. Again, I don't know. Maybe one day we find that connection with a computer. Maybe like I've seen some stuff out there, right? It's like there'll be a hologram. It'll put up a hologram of a human being, and so I don't know what all that looks like. I just know as of right now, that's one thing that you can still only get from a human to human interaction.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget who I was chatting with recently, but they said, they'll go into their calendar and they'll put all these little random touch points within their client base. And they don't tell their client, but they obviously have to do it for their own scheduling purposes. And when the client receives that phone call, just like, hey, just checking in, seeing how everything is, there's immediately a very strong reaction, like a positive reaction that client has because they think that advisor's thinking of them.
Mm.
I'm curious, like, do you have like other little tidbits that an advisor could like add in to help foster that relationship with their client? That's like kind of low hanging fruit.
Yeah. So probably a couple things. One is anytime you're talking about their money or their goals. So if you're in the business of helping people use their money to accomplish something, which is probably pretty much everybody, if you're in that line of work, you're talking about goals and things that people want to accomplish. One really easy way to immediately take the conversation to a new level, take the meeting to a new level, and also differentiate and separate yourself from 99% of advisors out there is to not just settle for what people tell you that they want to do when they say, here is my goal, but it's to take it a step further. Just be genuinely curious and try to figure out not what it is that they want to do, but the why that's behind it. Like what's the thing that's driving that decision? So for example, let's say you're talking with somebody and they're like, one thing that we're really looking at that is what we want to think about is buying this vacation home. Right. It's like, okay. All right. So you're thinking about buying a vacation home. Tell me more about that. Well, we really love going down to the beach. When we go down there, we get this family time. And so we want to buy a house down there that we can go to and visit whenever we want. So you start going through the details. Okay, what might that look like? And then you kind of come back to it. And so instead of just settling on, okay, what is it that you want to do, which is buy a beach house, try to unpack the why behind it. So I always say that behind every what is a why. Behind every goal is a purpose or a reason driving it. And so you can sometimes you can just ask straight up and be like, why a beach house? You could also try to be more delicate and say, I'm curious, why do you think a beach house would be? Why is that coming up? What is that going to do for you? However you want to say, you're trying to get behind the purpose, behind what they said they want to do. And so, like in one example I can think of, it was like, well, we want a beach house because we love creating memories and experiences with our family down there. And when we're down there, we feel like we're removed from all the busyness and responsibilities of life. And so then you go, okay, so this isn't about the beach house. The beach house is a representation of something deeper. So the beach house is a representation of wanting to create memories and experiences with your family where you can be more present and removed from the distractions of life. So that can facilitate this conversation around, if you want to buy a beach house, great, right? Let's look at the numbers and figure out what you need to do to make that happen. But let me point this out. What other ways might you create memories and experiences with your family where you're removed from distractions and can be present that don't cost as much as a beach house, where you don't have to just go to the same place every time, but you can maybe go other places? Is that something you'd want to do? And you're not telling them or convincing them not to buy the beach house. You're just getting them you're a thought partner. You're getting them to think through, is this actually what I want to do? Like, I thought that I wanted the beach house because we just got back from the beach and that was awesome. But now you're going deeper and helping them uncover what it is that they really want. So that's one, is anytime you talk about what somebody wants to do, remember there's a why behind it. And the why is also, by the way, where the emotional connection lies. So if you can uncover that with them, it builds this emotional bond and strength with the client. The second thing, this is a little bit more practical in terms of something you can do in your practice or in your business, You can also just do this in your life too, by the way. Some people think it's weird, but I've heard it referred to as, call it whatever you want, but essentially a client intel sheet. So anytime you're meeting with somebody, a client, prospective client, either way, you want to have a place where you're jotting down or making note of the things that are meaningful to them, and especially in their own words. Right? So like if somebody says that they're in 6 months, they plan on buying this car, or in 6 months, their kids going off to school, or instead of retirement, they use the term, I want to have my feet in the sand and a drink in my hand and never go to the office for another day in my life. Like that's you need to have somewhere where you store all of these things and keep track of them. Now, interestingly, we can tie it back to our conversation earlier. AI is starting to do this with some of these AI meeting note takers and analyzers, where they'll pick up on some of that and make it easier for you. But whether you have a sheet that you like a Word document that you file and you put in the client's file, or you have a field in your CRM, whatever it is that you use, like these are things that you need to be tracking and then referencing on an ongoing basis, or even setting a reminder, right? And saying, hey, 6 months or so, their kids going off to college. That needs to be a reminder that's like triggered in your calendar to follow up with them when that happens. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's not even anything that hard. It's just being more intentional is essentially what it amounts to.
Yeah, actually, it's funny because we're a tech business, and we're wondering, like, why is there so much uptake and interest on these meeting note takers? And I think a lot of it has to do with like staying present. Like rather than me right now jotting all the notes down for our conversation, I can stay present in our conversation and be very attentive to you, and use that tracker to go and cross-reference my notes in the future, to your point, to follow up or to help build out that plan.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't sell these things, so I don't hear advisors talking about them all the time. We did just bring one of them onto our platform. I think still at the end of the day, the biggest thing is like the fact that you don't have to spend 15 minutes after 15 at least after every meeting, like sitting there, like looking at your notepad and typing out what you learned, what you did, or like sitting there and trying to recall, like, okay, what was it that we talked about? Okay, all right, and then typing those notes out, right? It saves you from having, if you don't do the type out thing afterwards, maybe you take a picture of your notes and upload it. Well, if you're doing that, that means you took really thorough notes during the meeting, which meant you probably weren't as present as you wanted to be. So it's doing both of those. It's doing both of those things, and I think in a good way.
Yeah. Okay. I know I have to put the time clock down now. It's a very interesting conversation, though. Where's the best place any one of our listeners here can find you, especially the human side of money?
Yeah. So if you want to listen to the podcast, just whatever podcast player you're using right now, you just search the human side of money. We do bi-weekly episodes with advisors, but also just experts on things like behavioral finance and psychology and communication, or LinkedIn. That's another, I live on LinkedIn, put out quite a bit of content on LinkedIn. And then whenever I write, I have an blog series, an article series that I write, and some video content that I put out that's on the RFG website. So it's rfgadvisory.com.
Okay, wonderful. Brendan, I really appreciate you coming on today. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.